Hi everyone, I'm Nigel Saunders, and today I'm going to be doing a book review here in the Bonsai Zone. When I was just starting out into the world of bonsai, one of the first books I got was this one, Bonsai and Penjing, from the Montreal Botanical Gardens. This book was published in 1985 in Montreal. This book also introduced me to the Ling Yang style of bonsai, clip and grow bonsai, practiced by Mr. Wu Yi Sun. This book was the first book I read that actually talked about the bonsai artist's philosophy behind the styling of their trees and some of the methods they used to achieve this style. Several weeks ago, I got an email from Goose Lane Publishing asking me if I wanted to review a new bonsai book that's out. And I was a little skeptical at first, but when I saw what book it was, I was very excited to do the review. The new book was Bonsai Penjing, the collections of the Montreal Botanical Garden. So kind of a follow-up book to the original one I bought. I've always wondered if some of the trees in the original book from 1985, if they're still alive today, and if they are, what do they look like? So I'm hoping that maybe in this new book, I can find some trees from the 1985 book and see exactly what's happened to them over the last 35 years. Let's have a look at the book now. I'll open it up and Bonsai Penjing from the Montreal Botanical Gardens, written by Danielle Ouellet. The book costs $71.95 and it's available from Goose Lane Editions, and I'll put the link in the description down below. It's a really large book. It has really large photographs in it too. I'll open the book up now. Have a look at it. Beautiful photographs in it. Nice 2-page photograph there. The book's divided into 6 sections. Forwards, preface, history, aesthetics, photo gallery, and brief descriptions of the specimen trees. The photo gallery section is divided into Chinese collections, Japanese collection, tropical collection, North American collection, and other specimens. So the beginning seems to be talking about the history of the Montreal Botanical Gardens, the history of bonsai, the donations to the botanical gardens. I'm just skipping pages here. There's some early photographs of some of the trees being donated by Wu Yi Sun to Montreal. Amazing. Yeah, so lots of reading in here. Then it talks about bonsai aesthetics, the beauty of trees, it talks about the Chinese schools, Shanghai school, the Ling Nan school, talks about Japanese styles, North American approaches. There's lots of talk on North American style bonsai. And then it gets into the photo gallery. So that's kind of what you can expect. Picture of the tree, description, Chinese elm. And I can't show you all the photographs because there's so many. There's a lot in this book. I will show you at the back of the book here, there's a brief descriptions of the specimens. So it lists each tree that's photographed in the book. It has a description about the tree. It tells you the taxon, the family, common name, geographical distribution, the year of origin of the tree, and where it was created, and the dimensions of the tree, so the height of it and the width and all that. So really useful information. When you see a photograph of a tree, you can't really judge how large the tree is. So it's nice to actually know the dimensions so you can tell, oh, that's a large tree or a small tree. There's a section in the book called the North American Collection, and I noticed that there's a tree donated by David Johnson of Toronto here. So nice to see his tree in a major publication like this. There's a shot of some of the photographs in the book. This is from the tropical section and some ficus trees. It just explains how they try and keep the original creator's vision of the tree in mind as they're taking care of the trees. I've gone through both books now, and I was looking for trees that are featured in both books, and I think I've identified 13 of them. So let's have a look at those now. The photographs that you'll be looking at are just taken with my camera from the book outside. I didn't use any special flat lighting or anything, and I've just handheld the camera to take the pictures. So the color representation and the actual pictures definitely do not reflect what's in the original books. They're just rough approximates. Here's a picture of a Chinese elm from the 1985 book. This Chinese elm has been hollowed, sculpted, and grafted to resemble an elephant's head. Every feature is rendered in perfect detail, from the upraised trunk and twin tusks to the ears represented by small trees and roots arranged over the head. The elephant is a sacred animal in many Eastern religions and is especially revered by Buddhists. I think if you look closely at the tree, you can see it does look like an elephant's head. And now let's go forward in time 35 years and see what the tree looks like today. Here's the same tree today, and you'll see that the two are a mirror image of each other, and I'm not sure if that's because one photograph has been put in backwards in one of the books, or that the back of the tree has now become the front. I can't really tell. I still see those two roots that look like the elephant's ears, but it does look like maybe this was the back of the tree and that it's been changed around and now become the front. You can also see that the tree is lightened up a lot. In the first photograph, the bark was quite brown, and now the bark has become almost a white color. And you can see the pot is also reversed. The original pot was a whitish color, and now it's become more of a brown color. So the trunk has gotten lighter, and the pot has gotten darker. So yeah, it still looks good. I think in this Chinese style, I would like to see more of a traditional Chinese pot. The tree looks really old, and the pot doesn't look old in this photograph anyway. I think the original pot, you know, maybe the color wouldn't look good, both the trunk being white and the pot, but a similar style pot, a good quality Chinese pot, would probably look better than the pot that it's sitting in right now, in my opinion. The pot does kind of match that. When the Chinese elm, when the bark flakes off, you get that kind of brownish color in the bark, and it does match that color. So I don't think the color's bad. I'm not a fan. The pot looks too small to me. It looks too shallow, too small, and the round shape of the pot, the oval pot, and the rounded sides, I think it takes away from the tree. I think you just want to frame, this is a very unusual tree with a lot going on, and you don't want anything taking your eye away from the tree. And, you know, the fancy feet on the pot takes your eye away, and the curves of the pot take your eye away. So I think a very simple, plain, rectangular pot would really do this tree. You know, it would really bring out the best in the tree, in my opinion. As far as the overall style of the tree, it's pretty well identical to what it was. The only change I would see is that the foliage pads are now kind of rounded instead of being like horizontal steps. The Chinese typically style their branches like steps to heaven. So I think this tree is being maybe naturalized a little bit. So it may have lost a little of that original Chinese style to it, which, yeah, just by those rounded foliage pads and the branches drooping down at the tips. Whereas before you can see that it was more straight across the top of the foliage pads. They were more like rectangular steps. But overall, I would say for 35 years, the tree has really kept its original styling intent. And yeah, fantastic job keeping a tree virtually unchanged for 35 years. It's quite amazing. Here's a look at tree number 2 now. And here's the description in the 1985 book. It says, "The harmonious twin trunks and symmetrical branches give this compact Chinese elm a balanced, graceful appearance. The soft, rhythmic lines of the branches were created with the use of wiring over a period of many years." Here's that same tree now, 35 years later. So you can see the tree has thickened up and matured quite a bit. It's gone from a sort of a young, airy, juvenile tree to more of a mature bonsai tree. The original pot that the tree was in was, fairly fancy, but you could tell it was a handmade pot. It doesn't look like a mass-produced pot made from a mold. It looks like it was handmade. And it suits the tree really nicely, both the dark color of it and the size of it. And in the new tree, in the new picture, the pot's gotten a little bigger, but then so has the tree. So I think the pot size matches the tree really nicely. I don't mind the color of the pot. It's a blue glaze, and the trunk does have that gray color to it. It's that tan color where the bark is flaking off, but the older bark, or the bark that hasn't flaked off, is that nice kind of grayish, whitish gray color, and I think it suits the pot quite nicely, the color of it. The new pot does have that arch to it. The bottom of the pot, it's raised in the center and it tapers down to the feet, and same with the top lip of the pot. It looks like, the pot was made out of clay, and then it was set to dry before firing, and then it's distorted. It's kind of, warped a bit or something, and I'm not really a fan of that style of pot. I don't mind features on a pot that give it a handmade look, and it doesn't look like something was stamped out of a factory, every pot being perfect. But I also don't like that. I don't like it arching up in the middle. I just imagine water pooling on each end, and my drainage holes maybe not draining very well. Yeah, I'm just not personally a fan of distorted pots like that. It just, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way for some reason. However, yeah, I think now if we look at the tree, we'll go back to the original tree, which is nice and light and airy, and the branches are, fairly delicate. And then we go to the new tree, or the new picture of the tree, and everything's thickened up. All those branches have thickened up. They're maybe cascading a little more, maybe not. The overall style is, virtually identical. It's just all those branches have thickened up, and yeah, it's a fairly unusual tree in the fact that it's not a traditional looking tree. The root base in the original tree has those crossing roots that, come off the trunk at a funny angle, and there's one that comes out off the trunk quite high up in the tree and then goes into the ground. So definitely not a typical radial root base. And they've kept all those features, which is good. I mean, they kept the original character of the tree in the root base. It's not planted too highly out of the pot or too low. It looks quite good. Some of the branches, those sweeping branches to the left-hand side, they've thickened up a lot, and I think it helps counteract the heavy trunk on the right-hand side. Both those left-hand side branches and the trunk have gotten quite a bit thicker, and I think they're still in balance. I think if we go back to the original tree, there was basically two heavy trunks. There was the branch on the left and the branch on the right. And then some of those other branches that come up from the right-hand trunk are very thin in the original picture, and they've been allowed to thicken in the second image. So now we have basically two heavy branches on the left side and the heavy trunk on the right. And I don't really think that was the original intention of the tree, but I think it works quite well. I think it helps to balance that, that large offset of that trunk on the right-hand side. I think if you didn't have that weight and mass on the left-hand side, I think the tree would look a little unbalanced. It looked fine when it was young. It looked light and airy, and everything looked quite good. But definitely, as that main trunk thickens up, I think they've done a good job keeping the original style of the tree and keeping it balanced. I think, it's very good job on maintaining a tree over 35 years, especially a Chinese elm, which are known for rapid growth. Here's a look at tree number 3 from the original 1985 book, and here is the description. For Chinese growers, it is not only the style of a tree which is symbolic, but also the order and position in which trees are planted. In this arrangement of Chinese elm, the young tree is planted in front. It is called hishu, or leading the young by the hand. Had the young tree been set behind, it would have been called fulao, or carrying the old on the back. Here's the same two trees today. You can see they've changed quite a bit. They've thickened up a lot. You can see in the original styling that the younger tree is placed just in front of the larger tree, and it's planted quite close to the parent tree, so it kind of almost fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. The two look harmonious together. If we go to the new picture from the way the trees are currently planted, you can see that the younger tree is spread apart. It's almost like it's been moved further apart from the parent tree, and I don't know, the two just don't fit together quite as nicely. It looks like the child tree is trying to get away from the parent or something. It's too far away. The new pot that it's in, it looks a little small to me, and I don't like the newness of it. It looks like a brand new pot. It looks shiny, too shiny. It doesn't suit the old tree to have this, polished up pot underneath it. The color is also maybe a little on the red side. It could be it almost matches the color on the bark, but not quite. Yeah, I would say the pot could be just slightly lighter, or slightly larger, and more of an earth color in it rather than that reddish color. The styling of the pads in the newer picture are also slightly more rounded on top, so it has a little more of a naturalistic style. The pads in the older photograph are they're flatter across the top, but this is a subtle change, but I think the tree looks better with the naturalistic style branch structure on it, and everything else looks quite, it hasn't changed a whole lot. The roots are all there, and all the branches are still there. So yeah, quite an amazing task to keep a Chinese elm, virtually unchanged for 35 years. The next tree, I'm not sure if I have a match in the new book or not. They're both Fukian teas, and they look similar, but quite different. So I'm kind of guessing that they're the same tree, but they may not be. So I'll read the description of the Fukian tea in the original 1985 book. It says, the strong leaning trunk supported by large anchoring surface roots impart a powerful yet amazing delicate appearance to this Fukian tea. The tea evokes the image of an ancient tree growing in the countryside, used as a meeting place for villagers and passers-by, says Mr. Wu. The addition of the seated musician enjoying the cooling shade provided by the overhanging branches reinforces this impression, but also serves to fill in the void between the soil surface and the second branch, as well as complementing the triangular shape of this masterpiece Penjing. Now let's go to the new book and have a look at that picture. So you can see the tree's reversed. This could possibly be the back of the tree, but it has a very similar style and structure, other than these cascading branches off to the one side. So I can't guarantee you it's the same tree, but it looks very similar, and the age looks about right. So yeah, if it is the same tree, it's changed quite a bit in the style, which would be unusual. They've tried to keep the style the same, so that's why I'm not sure if it's the same tree or not. I may be wrong. The more I look at it, it has a similar style, but I'm not sure. So if it is the same tree, the style has changed quite a bit with those cascading branches off to the one side, which keeps the tree balanced. It definitely looks really nice. Now, the original picture, if we go back to that, it also looks very balanced and very natural looking. But I can't say too much more because they may not even be the same tree. We may be comparing apples to oranges here. If it is the same tree, it's undergone dramatic restyling, and which would be unusual. So I'm thinking it probably isn't, but it may be just one that looks very similar to that original tree in the book. Here's tree number 5 now from the original 1985 book, and I'll read you the description that's beside the picture of the tree. It says, "This ancient-looking Chinese elm possesses a semi-hollowed trunk, resulting perhaps from an injury which was enlarged by the action of water dripping through it over a long period of time." Let's look and see how this tree looks today now. Here it is today. So you can see that hollowed trunk looks quite different now. It's lost a lot of, I don't know if that was deadwood along the trunk or a live vein that's kind of died off, but the trunk, has quite a bit of inverse taper now. It doesn't really have a solid footing in the ground other than those 2 live veins that come down, almost like legs or something. You can see the base of the tree is rotted away at the ground level. So I would say that, the base of this tree has definitely deteriorated over the years. However, the upper part of the tree looks fantastic. It's definitely matured and gotten better. In the original photograph, you can see the tree was planted in it looks like a brown unglazed pot, which looks quite nice. It suits the tree and the composition. It's also photographed on a really nice stand. I think it's one thing I like about the photographs in the original book is that all the trees seem to be presented better. There's not too much oil on the pots. The photographs the lighting isn't quite as dramatic on them. It shows you more of the actual tree, I would think. It creates maybe less of a mood, but it's more of a record type photograph where you can see all the branches. There's not parts of it in shadow on that. And the display stands certainly make the trees look fantastic. I think that's one thing lacking in the new photographs is that I'm finding that they're just kind of in a studio setting. It doesn't have a stand underneath any of the pots, I don't think. And the pots are too shiny. They've either got too much oil on them or their pots are too new. And the pots just don't seem to suit the trees very well. You've got this ancient tree and the pots all look like they're brand new. And also the moss on them. The moss looks brand new and green in every picture too, which I'd like to see a little more variety in the moss and the way the trees are presented. If I look at the styling of the tree, in the original picture, most of the branch tips are upright, which, is quite typical on a deciduous tree like a Chinese elm. And if we go to the new photograph where it's defoliated, a lot of the tips are wired down and they're all cascading, which is more of a pine tree type style. So I don't think this tree has kept the original styling intent maybe as much as some of the other trees. I think it's been maybe a little too heavily wired and not enough clip and grow on this one. It just, it's looking a little too styled and maybe not quite as natural as it could look. Here's a look at tree number 6 from the original 1985 book, and I'll read you the description. The abrupt change of direction near the base of this Chinese elm's trunk line and its strong slant lend this tree a dramatic air. Let's have a look at the tree as it looks today. So you can see it's matured quite a bit. The root base especially, the roots have gotten thicker. If we go back to the original picture, the root base on this tree always bothered me. I never liked it. It was different, and you certainly remember it. I'm not going to describe what it looks like to me, but it does remind me of something. And I think the tree is magnificent. In this first picture, it looks light and airy, and nice proportions between the trunk and the branches. Let's go to the newer picture now. And I think, the top of the tree still looks really good. It's maybe spread out a little wide for a tall vertical tree like this. I think the root base, I don't know if it's improved or it's just slightly different. I think there's been a lot of wiring to the tree. Instead of the branch tips pointing upwards like the original photograph, they've all been wired down, almost again like a pine tree type style. I think, you can still identify the tree as the tree in the original photograph. It's still quite recognizable. And yeah, I think it looks really good. They've done a really good job in keeping the proportions of the tree, not letting that apex get too thick. But yeah, I think it's just gotten maybe a little wide, the tree. It could be cut back a bit, some hard pruning, and, some of those branches they're getting maybe a little dense at the tips. The tree no longer looks light and airy, and maybe that's just age that, the branches are thickening up and the ramifications increasing, and maybe it's just unavoidable that the tree will look different as it gets older. But it's certainly not a tree I like. I don't dislike it, but it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't reach out to me as a tree that has. I don't know. I don't have a strong appeal for it. I never have. If I were to judge the two images of it, I think I prefer the tree in the original image. I think as a young tree, in nature you would see a lot of roots like that, but as the tree gets older, I think, I don't know, it just, those faults, to me they're faults. They just, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, let's go on to the next tree.